Your key advice to future data leaders, Steve.
Don't go in believing you know everything. Go in believing that you've got everything to learn.
One more.
To be effective as the data team, the most important thing is to be close to the business. Analysts should be business people who live and breathe the business.
How do you get close to the business?
Earlier in my career, someone said, follow the money, work out where you make money, where you lose money, and then people will start to listen to what you've got to say.
And the company you're joining now is really solving a problem that you faced yourself when you moved to Germany.
I remember moving here 6 years ago, and if you didn't have euros, you couldn't go to a restaurant.
Steve Buckingham is the VP of Data at Taxfix and soon to be Head of Analytics at SumUp. Taxfix is a Berlin-based fintech company that has revolutionized the tax filing process through its mobile application. The company was established in 2016, and 5 years later, Taxfix reached a milestone of over 1 billion euros in tax refunds returned to its users. The company has closed a $220 million Series D round in April 2022 and achieved unicorn status. SumUp is a leading global fintech company that provides payment solutions and business tools for small merchants. It is operating in over 35 markets worldwide and serves more than 4 million small businesses. SumUp recently secured a record 1.5 billion euros in one of Europe's largest private credit deals led by Goldman Sachs. Steve Buckingham is an incredibly experienced data professional with over 20 years in the data space. He started his eventful career working for the Labour Party in the UK, where he was the main project manager for the internal development of campaign technology. After a few stops in various data and CRM roles in the media industry, Steve joined Taxfix in 2022 as VP of Data. As of January 2025, he joins SumUp as Head of Analytics. I will talk with Steve about his journey at Taxfix. We will discuss how the data team at Taxfix developed over the years and how it looks like today. We also talk about which data initiatives had the biggest impact on the business and what the biggest fuck-ups were. Lastly, Steve will share his advice for future data leaders. And with that, I bring you Steve Buckingham. So let's get into it. Let's talk about your work at Taxfix and then later also about your new gig.
Yeah.
So what I would be interested in hearing is what timing you joined Taxfix as a data leader. What was the funding stage of the company? How big was it at the time you joined, and how big was the data team when you joined?
I joined Taxfix just after their Series D, so 2022. They just relatively recently become a unicorn in the Series D. At the end of the funding excitement around that period, sort of 2021, 2022. But also the business was growing successfully, doing that problem of solving taxes, solving tax filing, starting in Germany, working in other markets. The business as a whole was around about 500 people at the time, and data within that was around 35, so around 8% of the company. And it was a centralized function leaning towards analytics, and it probably started out driven by analytics. The whole company was starting to be more mature by that point.
Yeah. And these 35 people, how were they split up into roles?
We had a data platform team doing all the things you'd expect a data platform team to do, providing the core services, providing core services for things like tracking, starting to look at issues like governance, security, privacy, a lot more as companies do when they scale, and really the egress of data, making sure that all the platforms we use effectively or increasingly effectively. Then we also had a central analytics engineering team. Maybe analytics engineering team, describing it as traditional is a bit weird, but I've worked in data for more than 15 years now. I remember having central BI teams and central BI modeling teams.
Right.
There's changes in emphasis, but it's not a million miles from where we used to be. And then we had analytics teams working on top of that. Great teams split into Product analytics then split between Germany and new markets, also marketing analytics, operational analytics. At the time, there was no team concentrating on business reporting as a whole, and that's something we changed later on.
Okay.
At the time, we had no data science team. That's been changing very recently.
What were the major changes since you joined?
You got to talk about the elephant in the room, because a lot of companies went through this in 2022, 2023. Things became a lot tighter. I remember a previous job, I've been asking, you do your staff planning, your growth planning in a growing business. I remember asking for 3 or 4 new team members and being told, why don't you take 8? And this was around the 2021 time. And I think a lot of companies, including Taxfix, have been through this. And then 2022, 2023 came along, and everyone realized funding wasn't going to magically get better. Sustainability was important. Taxfix, like other companies, went through a layoff period, and that had a lot of hard decisions about how to operate. We had to lose team members. One thing I realized was you couldn't just shave something from everywhere and keep everything basically the same. There was an opportunity to make some more radical changes. So a couple of the more radical changes I made at the time was I made a business reporting team, a business intelligence team, so that we had clear responsibility and a clear idea of how we were doing as a business, sharing that information more effectively, because it was something that hadn't been the focus before. The overall business performance was not something that we had a central enough handle on. And the other thing I did was I wanted to make us more agile, and I split up that analytics engineering team and put it inside the analytics functions. Partly it was a practical measure that I had to work out how to manage with fewer people, but partly it was driven by one of my core beliefs is that you have to be effective as a data team. The most important thing is to be close to the business. The most important thing is to understand the business. I wanted the people who were building the data models, which are the foundation of the analysis, which are now increasingly the foundation of other uses of data like data science, increasingly AI, close to the business, so that we could understand them and we could understand what we were building, and most importantly, why we were building it. That we weren't building it as a technical endeavor, we were building it to help Taxfix make more money.
Right. Let's talk a little bit more about this kind of journey and this kind of evolution of the data team. When you joined, it was 35 people centralized. Do you know when the first person joined Taxfix? The first data person must have been quite...
It was pretty early. They always had a good data culture. By 2018, when they were still getting going as a business, they already had data people. By the time I joined, there'd been a significant organization for at least a couple of years. My predecessor had started off as a head of data, and eventually that role had evolved into what's the VP level at Taxfix. And it had been through the various sort of modes of operation where data engineering had been separated from analytics at one point, and it had just been centralized together. Now it's going through a decentralization again. These things tend to go in cycles. So I would say they seriously started investing in data around about 2018, 2019, as it became apparent that the business really did have a future in Germany. And then from then onwards, particularly heavily on marketing and product analytics. And it took a while before we reached beyond those areas.
Got it. So 2018, would you say that was after product market fit? Was that Series A?
Yeah, around Series A product market fit. Like that was like the time that Taxfix was becoming serious as a business, and they took data seriously right from the start.
So 2018, Series A, starting to invest in custom data infrastructure, growing the team to 35 people, up to Series D, 3-4 years to grow from Series A to Series D, to grow the data team from 1 to 35.
In 2022, it was 35 people, centralized but business aligned, rapid growth mode. And the change since then has been like, how do we become sustainable? And part of sustainability has involved getting even closer to the business and in some ways moving more towards a decentralized model. I mean, throughout my time there, the data team reported to me. I think that's going a bit more decentralized now. If you look, they're now investing in AI, they're investing in analytics, also in platform, but those services are becoming more decentralized because the use of data for AI is it's really quite different from analytics. You still need a platform team to manage it, but their needs become different because you've got different quality measures, needs for real-time data. It's also needing to get nearer to the engineering teams, hitting the product, getting data into the product. The platform services are moving towards wider platform services in the company. Analytics is becoming more of a specialist function, getting closer to the business. That's a good thing for the health of the business in the long term. Like trying to pretend that what you need to use data effectively for AI or what you need to use data effectively to change the product versus what you need to understand the business, what you need to understand the success of features, what you need to drive marketing effectiveness is a sign of maturity. And pretending it's one team doing the same thing is not what a business needs in the long run. And it's something not at the Taxfix scale where they're now about 400 people. But as you get towards the 1,000, the 2,000, the 5,000, the 10,000, very few organizations are going to have this massive central team with hundreds and hundreds of people doing everything.
So let's talk about what decentralized means in the current stage where Taxfix is. There were 35 people in the central team when you started. Now you said that analytics engineering and also analysts start to become decentralized.
Yeah.
So how many people are in data engineering roles, analytics engineering roles, analyst roles? Where do they sit?
The core platform team is relatively small, about 4 or 5 people. It's incredibly automated. They've done some great work to manage things effectively as code. So managing security as code, managing permissions as code, managing anonymization and masking of data as code, bringing in data contracts to manage quality through code. And then that also automates some of the other elements like the management of access and anonymization. So that platform side is really concentrating on good quality foundations, concentrating on providing a good range of platform services and allowing other teams to plug into it. And that's why it's moved closer to the wider platform services team and operating with an engineering tech mindset. Whereas the analysis side, including product analytics, market analytics, and business intelligence side, trying to get them as close as possible to the marketing team, the chief marketing officer and the chief operations officer, getting everyone working closely with FP&A or with product analytics and try to dive deep, be part of engineering and product teams delivering product in a very different way from like a data platform team is managing. The data platform team is like a technology team delivering a service. Yep. If you look at the product analytics, we should be driving to make sure we understand the success of our ideas, iterate them, work closely with research and be hard-nosed about where we're making money, where we're improving user experience. And it's not a technical endeavor, it's a business endeavor. Analysts should be business people who live and breathe the business they are partnered with. Early in my career, someone said, follow the money, work out where you make money, where you lose money, and then people will start to listen to what you've got to say.
That's a great bridge to the next question. Yeah, so let's talk about business impact of your data team and the data function.
Yeah.
What were the most impactful things you did in those 2 years?
You get jealous as a manager. Individual victories are sometimes more fun around the discoveries the team make. And at a sort of management level, probably the most impactful thing I did was deciding to do some radical change when we did the restructuring and doing that thing around splitting up the analytics engineering team and getting closer to the business. It turned out we could move faster with a smaller team by being closer to the business because we could be much more ruthless about what really needed to be done and what was valuable. That was probably my best decision as a manager. I made a bet on pushing harder into experimentation. Had a fantastic manager, Anna Barnett, who actually pushed me to do this, bringing in a proper experimentation culture. Last year, Taxfix did a big relaunch of the fundamentals of how the Taxfix app worked. We've gone through the acquisition of Steuerbot, which is another brand that Taxfix owns in Germany, and they had some fantastic technology which allowed Taxfix to stop being a client-side mobile app, become much more of a server-side app, lots more flexibility in that. But it was a massive change. Changing the fundamental core app is a massive risk for a business. And we actually ran it as a massive experiment, bringing in early minimal viable product version of the new app, running it to 1% of the customers, even though we knew it would come out worse, increasing that traffic over time as and when we could show we were getting improvement, and allowing to iterate. And it was like an A/B experiment on the main app driver in the company. It gave us the confidence to modernize, bringing in that experimentation culture, bringing in the place where we could upscale our experiments, bringing in the place where people had confidence in our results, and changing the culture as well as the technology together. That really enabled Taxfix to change as a business, because it allowed us to get off a client-side platform, which had been the right call when Taxfix really started going to market in 2018, when performance was an issue around, need an internet connection and worrying about what would happen if people work with, they had poor signal, through to the 2024, which we live in now, where server side is right, it gives you flexibility, and nobody worries about internet connectivity anymore, and everyone wants the dynamic experience that enables. That's really enabled the business to change how it runs.
That's a really great example for a successful experimentation.
We weren't aiming for an immediate 5% uplift. We were aiming to have confidence that we could change the business, and to have confidence that we could change the business fundamentally without breaking the core. The payoff came later through the flexibility from the new system. We had to not break the core.
Yeah. Maybe last question about your old job before maybe talking about your new gig. In those 2 years at Taxfix, what were the biggest fuck-ups?
What were the biggest fuck-ups? I could have embraced some change sooner, actually. It was when we did the layoffs that I took the chance to make some fundamental changes. But in reality, maybe I could have done that sooner and we could have moved faster. I knew we were moving slower than we should in how we were understanding the business. And that was slowing down our ability to gain insights. Why didn't I move faster? Sometimes it's easy to move faster when you've got a forcing function, particularly when you know it's going to involve radical change. So that was one big thing. In retrospect, when I started, there was a huge focus on compliance, governance, scaling. At the time, everyone was thinking about continual growth. Every company were thinking around topics like IPO. Unless you've got the time in, they distract you from growing your business. Not just the data function, but the whole business was a bit distracted from the fundamentals of growing the business in a sustainable way at this drive for IPO style growth. A lot of companies came across as well that suddenly we found out our business priorities weren't aligned to the market needs. I do probably sign up to the idea that actually 2024, we're probably in a bit of a healthier place around how businesses think about growth.
All right, let's talk about your new gig at SumUp, which you're going to start in how many days? It's not that
I'm going to start it in 3 days.
So what's the situation you're going to find there compared to the situation you found?
They are going to be different problems because it's a different business. What the problems are, I've got some ideas, but you never know until you start. I'm excited about the business for multiple reasons. One, they're a fantastic growth story. They're up around, 3,500 people. They're at a different scale of growth, a different scale of maturity. You're active in dozens of markets, and I love their product. I love going to market stores. Your coffee shop can offer you car payment service. They've been one of the most important factors in digitizing Germany. I remember moving here 6 years ago, and if you didn't have euros, you couldn't go to a restaurant. And SumUp's been a fundamental part of enabling so many small businesses to be successful. I'm expecting to get to go in there and find like this company that's super excited about growth, that's still pushing hard with growth, and has grown at such a hyper scale that I expect to find like challenges around, as I would call it, like data communication. As I said with Taxfix, maybe Taxfix was worrying too much around things like governance and alignment too early, given its size. Taxfix, SumUp definitely won't have that problem. When you're 3,500 people, when you're in dozens of markets, things like governance, understanding, alignment really matter, because they're, especially with them being a super decentralized business. I'm really excited that they've got this tribe culture. They've embraced decentralization. They've embraced independence. They know it's fundamental to how they still move quickly.
Yeah.
But there are important questions you still need to be able to answer. Like a company at that size, I bet you there are a dozen different answers or more about what is a customer. And how do you count a customer? When do they churn? And it doesn't sound that important, but when you start to get your finance teams, your marketing teams, your product teams together, getting everyone on the same page about what they mean so that you can make meaningful decisions becomes important. And I'll actually be going into a sort of head of analytics role there, moving from reporting into tech to reporting into finance. And I'm super excited about that. I've been in the different parts of the business before. I think as a business scales, having your whole data function inside tech makes no sense, because if you're doing that, then you're not designating data as a business driving function. You're designating it as a tech function, and it can often get overwhelmed by delivering the core product. I'm expecting to have a business that really wants me to ensure my teams focus on business impact, focus on understanding growth, focus on driving the success of, whether it's if we're working with marketing, if we're working with product, if we're working with the business strategy or the finance teams. I will be working as part of the FP&A function. My team members want to resist that before. Like data engineers tend to really want to be part of tech and say, if we're part of finance, then are we real engineers?
Yeah.
And I think that's for you to define. But by being part of the business functions, close to the business functions, I'm excited about having the ability to carry on making an impact at SumUp. So they've got all their ML functions completely separate. They've got their data platform functions completely separate. There's a whole world of data which I'll need to learn about, frankly, at SumUp. Yeah. And so I will be a lot more focused than I was at Taxfix. At Taxfix, I was overall everything in a company 10% of the size. And now I will be much more focused, but much more focused in a company still growing at an astonishing speed and facing the complexities that brings.
And what's the first few things that you will be doing in your new role? How are you going to get started?
I'll tell you the answer, but yeah, the first thing is you never really know. You don't know when you're going to get in, and are you going to have other priorities. But fundamentally, I want to spend my first time understanding the challenge. Like I want to go and understand what we're doing with marketing, with customer services, with product, with FP&A, with our operations teams. In an ideal world, I would spend time with those teams, not just with my analysts, spending time with the business units, understanding, asking them. One of my first questions back 15 years ago when I started working with clients was, how do you grow your business? Why are you important? One of my first contracts I worked on was with the Times newspaper. And one of the first things I did was spend a week just sitting with their CRM team and understanding how they grew the business and how it made sense that giving away an iPad was the cheapest way to grow the Times subscription base at the time. And I believe in that. Don't go in believing you know everything. Go in believing that you've got everything to learn. Yes, you've got specialist knowledge. Hopefully I've got some good ideas, but you go try and do it before you understand why you're doing it and what the business exists for. Then you're probably doing the wrong thing.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing all these things with me. Unfortunately, our time is coming to an end. I could continue talking to you for hours. It was really great to have you on.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for having me.